When was the last time you came back from a trip and thought, goodness, I'm living life all wrong? I just got back from one of those trips, and I'd like to tell you all about it. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Urdu Seekhiye podcast. This is episode number 33. I just got back from doing a motorcycle tour in the northern parts of Pakistan, and I want to spend the next few episodes telling you about it. Because this is a language podcast, an Urdu one, I thought it would only make sense to tell you about the journey in Urdu. But I think much more quickly in English, and I'm impatient, so I'm going to tell you the story in both languages. First in English, and hopefully soon in Urdu. So first, a massive shout out to the folks at Lost with Purpose, the tour company I went with to Pakistan. Alex and Sana are the ones who usually lead the tour, but this time around they were busy with opening up a hostel in a town called Ishkoman Valley, so they couldn't join us. I've heard great things about this place, and the hostel will open in June 2025, so you might want to check that out. They did join us for 2 days though, and those were super fun. I can easily say that for me, it was a life-altering experience. You know how sometimes you go to a conference or workshop and you hope that it'll be life-altering? You hope to come back a changed person? In the past, I've definitely taken trips that have changed me, but just slightly. And with time, you forget the ways in which the experience changed you or inspired you to live in a different way. For me, if I don't act immediately, then it's easy to go back to my old habits and routines. I don't feel that this trip was that kind of experience. I feel that the change that this trip brought wasn't subtle at all. That's why I want to tell about it. One, so the future me can have a record of it, and two, maybe someone else listening to this might be inspired to do something that's well out of their comfort zone. It doesn't have to be a motorcycle tour, although if you choose to do it, you want to make sure you do it with tour guides Ehsan and Wasim. I think they might also individually offer private tours, so reach out to them with your dates and what you might want to check out in Pakistan, and they'll hook you up. I'll be sure to link to their Instagram so you can connect with them. So back to what I was saying. This trip has definitely changed my brain. So I went on the tour offered in April 2025. Right now, it's about the end of May. So a little under a month ago, I got back. And I'm glad I waited this long, returning to my 9 to 5, having taken in new information, and speaking to various people about the trip has helped me get a new perspective on it, a less ignorant one. I'll talk more about ignorance later on. So here we go. First, I want to start with something I just listened to today. I listened to Trevor Noah's podcast, What's New? The episode is with Jonathan Haidt and is titled The Anxious Generation. In it, they talked about something called a third place. After looking it up quickly, it's a term coined by sociologist Ray Oldenburg. And he says third places are informal public gathering spots where people come together outside of their home. So the home is our first place, the second place is our work, and this third place is where we get a chance to connect with the community. So places like cafes, parks, barbershops, community centers. The idea is that these third places are crucial for social interaction and mental well-being, offering a space where people can relax, connect, and build relationships. Why do I bring this up? Well, in this episode, Trevor talked about how when he was a child, they would take bricks and block off both ends of their street to allow them to play whatever. And as we were riding our motorcycles through various towns, we saw this repeatedly. Kids would be playing cricket on the road. And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, how dangerous? How are parents allowing this? But they also often had massive stones on the road to cause the cars to slow down. And of course, I'm sure they were mindful of times when the traffic was minimal so as to not put themselves in too much danger and also to not annoy too many drivers. For them, as for Trevor, the street served as a third place. So while I still think it's dangerous, it's nice to have a different way to look at it. And I definitely am glad that the alternative isn't happening, which is happening in the developed world. Kids are on their devices, cell phones, iPads, and so on. So give that episode a listen, especially if you have kids. All right, so I'm going to shift gears a bit here. I'd like to tell you about my relationship with Pakistan. I was born there, in Karachi, but came to the States at the age of 7. Before the motorcycle trip, I had been back to Pakistan 5 times. The last 2 trips I remember very well, but the most notable trip was in 2023. And that's when I went with my parents, stayed close to family on my dad's side, and I also attended an NLP workshop with Alia Moyuddin. So NLP, for those of you who might be interested, stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. The people I met at that workshop were remarkable and so full of energy with the intention of bringing about positive change in their lives. That's also the intention I went in with, and while that was a phenomenal experience, looking back at it 2 years later, what has stayed with me to this day from that trip are all the in-drive trips I took, from North Nazimabad to the luxury beach hotel where the workshop was held. I think it was about an hour's drive one way. I got to talk to so many people this way. In-drive, by the way, is like Karachi's Uber. I was told how I shouldn't be talking to the drivers, and especially not to let anyone know that I was from abroad. So even though I consider myself an introvert, I couldn't just ride for an hour in silence. So I always let my gut guide how friendly and open I would be with someone. In the 24 or so rides I took, maybe 1 or 2 felt uneasy in terms of the driver's political or religious views. But otherwise, everyone was quite open-minded, curious, and super friendly. Both sides felt that the hour would pass by more quickly if there was friendly chatter, and clearly I was always safely dropped off to my destination. Maybe I was foolish, maybe I got lucky, or maybe the majority of Pakistanis are kind and lovely people. I mention this experience only because I think it played a crucial role in my decision to do the motorcycle tour. Because I spoke Urdu well enough to be understood and to understand, I thought even in a tough situation, I could talk my way to safety. I had also seen Karachi's traffic and seen my cousin's children maneuver in it, both in cars and motorcycles. And then there was this one time where I had my cousin teach me how to ride on his motorcycle. We spent about 40 minutes trying, and I did not get far at all. But the fact that he spent the time showing me to ride, and the fact that his wife and daughter were also present and didn't once try to dissuade me from getting on the bike, left me feeling shocked and in awe. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears once more, but I'd like you to remember this story about my cousin's wife, as we'll come back to her. Right now, I want to share with you a talk by a Buddhist monk titled, "What is Ignorance?" I often get down about what is happening in the world, and most often, the only effective remedy I have are words of wisdom, words from various Buddhist teachers and monks, and various historical fiction. So this talk, titled, "What is Ignorance?" comes from the Insight Timer app. It's free to download. I highly recommend that you give it a listen. I'll provide the link to this short talk on the Urdu Seekhiye website. I'm going to read a bit of it to you now and tell you how I committed the sin of ignorance during my visits to Pakistan. He says, "The root of all our problems, according to Buddhism, is ignorance." But what is ignorance? Now, if we go from the Greek roots, the gno is to know, and the I in front of it means not knowing. And if we think that ignorance is not knowing, I think we're making a basic mistake. I think that ignorance in Buddhism isn't not knowing, it's thinking that you actually do know. The minute we label something, we think we know something about it, and we stop paying attention to it. It's also often said that within Buddhism, the core basic ignorance is the splitting of the self from other. That's what we're ignorant of. We're ignorant that we're not really separate. And so we see ourselves as apart from everything rather than among everything, which is actually much more the truth. And so the minute we see something and we think we know something about it, we see a person, we think we know them because we saw them yesterday, or because the color of their skin, or we know something about their religion. The minute we make that assumption, we make them other than us. And the minute we other them, we think we know something, and we stop paying attention at that point. All right, so I'm stopping reading at this point, and I'm going back to the story about my cousin's wife. So when I decided to learn how to ride a motorcycle from my cousin, I was sure that his wife would distance herself from me, thinking that I'm not conservative enough. Like, this is not an activity that women do, right? And especially because she has a younger daughter whom I'm so attached to right now. So I'm thinking, she's thinking that this is not a good influence for my daughter. So I've got all these preconceived notions about what she must be thinking about me, right? And also, I think maybe I felt this way about most women in Pakistan, at least in that area, right? From that social class. So I'm sure there's so many more other preconceived notions that I have. I think it's important to let you know the reason why I think this, right? Because every time she leaves her home, she wears not a full-on burqa, but she's covered from head to toe. So yeah, no, actually, she even covers her face. Just her eyes are visible. So this is what he was talking about, how the minute you see someone and you think you know them just because of the clothes that they're wearing, that's it. You stop paying attention. You think you know them and you've made your judgments, you've made your decision. And that is where all these incorrect thoughts were popping in from. So it was very eye-opening and mind-blowing that it actually brought us closer, and how incorrect I was in my thinking. So that was one of the places where I committed the sin of ignorance. I was very sure that I'd get some judgmental glances my way from this family, whom I saw nearly every day, but they never came. And reflecting on this, it's another reminder that I'm my harshest critic. What I mean by that is I'm more judgmental towards myself than I think anyone has ever been towards me, right? Because they're not ever thinking that, oh, I'm not conservative enough or I'm being immodest, right? I'm thinking it. It is in me that I feel like, oh, women should be this way. Women here are this way. And there is no this way. There's no this way in Pakistan. There's no this way in the United States. There's no this way. There's no correct way. There's no, good way. There just is, but it's me. In my head, I've got a clear delineation of what good and bad is. And clearly what I am is not good. And so having these experiences brings this to light, and you reevaluate, hopefully you reevaluate how hard you are on yourself, how you view yourself. So that this Pakistan has been good for me in that regard. Is my journey over? Oh, nowhere near over, unfortunately. But yeah, it's good to have that awareness, to reflect upon these experiences. Okay, so shifting gears once more, I want to tell you about my mindset before I left Fairfax, Virginia for Islamabad. So about a year before the tour, I decided to get a motorcycle solely to prepare for this tour. With great help and support from my younger brother, who had also just gotten a motorcycle, I bought the thing, got all the gear, and started practicing. I believe I bought it in August, and soon, here in the DC area, it was just too cold to ride. So I used that as an excuse not to. Fast forward to April, a day before I leave for the tour, my brother tells me I shouldn't go because I haven't had enough practice. So I text Alex and tell her what my brother tells me and ask her what she thinks, whether, she thinks I'll be able to do this or not. So she tells me that so long as I'm not looking down at the instruments while writing, I should be okay. Also, she had shipped a motorcycle part to my place, which I needed to take to Islamabad. So I didn't really have a choice. I needed to go. So I went, but I was still very much in the mindset that if I didn't feel comfortable,
I would stay back. I could just stay in their hostel for the next 20 days. So I land in Islamabad. Ehsan, our tour guide, happens to pick me up. And of course, as I'm trying to get in the car, I walk over to what would be the passenger side in the United States. But it was the driver's side there. So he's all like, "Oh, you're going to drive?" They drive on the left side of the road. Surprisingly, it didn't take too long to get used to. Back to the point. So we eventually get to talking about how much experience I have, or don't have. And I told him what my brother told me and that I talked to Alex. And he told me the one thing that turned my maybe into, "Oh, in that case, I got this." So what does he tell me? He says, "Shireen, I've met women who have not even touched a motorcycle before going on tour. I teach them the day before and they go." So, of course, after hearing that, I felt so much better. That was just the push I needed, at least initially. So I had gotten in at 3 or 4 in the morning on the 10th. Then, much later that day, we went out for a practice ride, and that helped me immensely. My confidence level had gone back up. But the next day, when I met the 3 tall dudes who were also part of the tour, I had mixed feelings. They were all from California and had all this experience with camping and just climbing mountains and just doing rugged things, So that was definitely a bit intimidating. And it's not always easy for me to insert myself in a new social circle. But they were super sweet. And after having chai with them, I was starting to feel better. I'll probably devote a whole episode to this phrase from a song that keeps coming back into my mind, especially when I'm in Pakistan, which I think sums up the mindset of majority of Pakistanis, or at least the working class. They have this tendency to just leave it to God. It's this idea that what will be, will be. So with that in mind, I took off with the group. Please do check out the page for this episode on the website. I've shared some photos and videos from this trip and from my previous trips to Pakistan, if you're interested. And as for the song, you'll just have to tune in to the next few episodes to find out what it is. Okay, so long story shorter, every time I return home from Pakistan, the biggest sensation that stays with me is how kind the people were. Even on this trip, there were several times that my motorcycle got stuck in a pothole, or I was in the wrong gear when going uphill, so my motorcycle stalled. And sure enough, some stranger would be behind my bike, ready to push or pull. They initially don't realize that they're helping a woman on a motorcycle, and when they do come to realize it, it's a neat moment to witness. They have a mixture of glee and surprise on their face. I never got a chance to stick around and chat with them, but I have no doubt that there isn't any malice in their realization. If I did get the chance to speak to them, I imagine they'd show me respect. The reason I bring this up is because there's this notion that a country like Pakistan is dangerous for women. And it may be so. Maybe it would have been different if I were alone, but I know Alex has ridden alone. But of course, there are precautions one must take. During this trip, I was with a group, so that obviously was my precaution. At one point, there was a landslide on our route, and so many men got out of their cars to see the destruction and the cleanup process. Apart from the two very elderly women who crossed over the rubble before the cleanup began, there were no women in sight. So, me being the only one on a motorcycle brought a lot of stares. But I didn't really feel scared, mostly because, as I said, I was part of a group consisting of 7 other men. But what if I were alone? The truth is, I wouldn't be alone. Even now, when I think about going back, I've made enough friends there to reach out to one of them to be like, hey, are you available? Can we go together? Right? There's no way in hell I'd do that alone. Yeah, now that I'm actually thinking about the landslide, sitting through that alone would have been very uncomfortable. I don't think anyone would have done anything because that's kind of why I distanced myself from the men. I think everyone knew that I was part of a group, but, there were new people coming from the back that saw me that never saw the whole group. And not once did anyone approach me. It was daylight, there were a lot of people. So I think I would have been okay, but I would have been so uneasy. I was uneasy, I won't lie. But the fact that I knew I was with a group of other people who were looking out for me, that helped me push aside any fearful thoughts. If I were alone, I would have been incredibly uncomfortable. Yeah, so I would not do such a thing alone. On the last day of our tour, I ended up meeting with Naima. She and I worked on episode number 20 together on the Urdu poem covering the incident with George Floyd. It's called Mera Dam Ghutta Hai. Do check that out if your Urdu is on the advanced side. Back to Naima. I had spoken to her on the phone on and off, but never did we do a video call. I'm not sure why that was. So when I saw her in person, it was a bit of a shock that my mind didn't have an image to reference. It was such a beautiful mixture of emotions seeing her for the first time, partly because I was totally exhausted from the motorcycle tour, partly because it was good to connect with a female, a Pakistani no less, after more than a week of being around only men. I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but I shared with her some of the frustrations I was feeling towards the end of the trip. For example, how men would excuse themselves when I was putting on my motorcycle gear. And in my head, of course, because the first thought in my head is always against myself, I thought maybe I was doing something wrong. Maybe I wasn't behaving in a modest way. Maybe I was making the men uncomfortable by being immodest. Perhaps I should put on my gloves, helmet, and jacket in my own room. But of course, at the same time, the thought was going through my head that the men don't have to do that. The men, whether they be front desk attendees or the guards waiting near the front door, they don't excuse themselves when the men in our group are putting on their gear. In fact, they come around and ask them questions. They might even ask them for a video testimonial or a review of their experience. So Naima helped me see it from a different point of view. She told me that they're just not used to seeing women in such clothes. And it's not a judgment against me or women, it's just out of respect. They think that I should have privacy while putting on my gear. There is no right or wrong, it's just what each person is used to. Their culture is one way, and my culture is another. The idea is that they're leaving this room where I'm the only woman out of respect for me. I recognize it's a different perspective. I recognize it's a different culture, a different way of thinking, a different way of being. But again, if I insert my Western upbringing, Western thought process, then in a culture where men behave like this, where they don't want women to be seen, where they think women are gentle, weaker creatures, then, there are opportunities that the women are foregoing because of this outlook. And again, when you visit a country like Pakistan, where you come from a different culture, where cultures are so different, you have to be okay with this idea that both perspectives might be okay, might be correct, right? I mean, maybe you just suspend this idea of what's correct. Maybe you just have to be okay with, okay, these are two opposing views, but it's okay for them both to exist. Because, well, whether you think it is or not, they do exist. Now you just got to deal with it. And you want to deal with it in a way that's healthy for you, right? You don't want to get angry or upset with yourself to the point where, you've got the negative chemicals running through your body, or you're acting out of anger or anxiety or whatever. So, anyway, that's what traveling and having these types of experiences do for you. In the talk I referenced earlier, What is Ignorance? He ends the talk by saying, the problem is the world is divided into people who think they're right. So the basic sin, if you want to use that word, in Buddhism is ignorance. But ignorance isn't not knowing. It's thinking you know. See if you can try to keep a don't know mind going throughout your day. What is this? Don't know. What is this? Don't know. And that allows you to open up that space for intimacy between yourself and others, and recognize that you truly are among rather than apart. Goodness, I have so much more to say. I haven't even touched on how my brain has been rewired from this experience. So I'll have to do another episode in English to talk about that. But before I sign off, with everything that is happening around the world, I encourage you to have this don't know mindset. Please do listen to the full talk. I hope it sparks curiosity in you, that it brings you closer to your fellow beings. For now, Khuda Hafiz.